We're continuing our sermon series in Mark's Gospel this morning, entitled Jesus Unique. I found this in my drawers the other day when I was getting rid of some clothes. I found this bottle of aftershave. It's empty. I actually bought this about 20 years ago for my wedding day. It's called Escape. Which I didn't really think about until afterwards, but the fragrance was fantastic, but the name was completely inappropriate for my wedding day. We're going to watch Mark's Gospel, chapter 14, verses 1 to 11 in the NIV on the screen now, as a woman takes a perfume that is completely appropriate for the action that she is about to do.
Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over.
So the passage starts with these words. Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away. That means it's Wednesday of Holy Week. And the chief priests and teachers of the law were scheming, were planning behind the scenes to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. You see, they saw that the people loved Jesus. You remember the crowds, the Greek word oklos, which means the overlooked, those who aren't religiously clean, those who don't quite tick all the boxes. They flooded towards Jesus. And so the religious leaders knew, look, if we're going to kill this carpenter, we need to do it under the cover of darkness. We can't do it in broad daylight because the crowds will riot. Their decision is not a religious one, it's a political one. We do it at night, not because we think that would be more pleasing to God, but because we don't want the Romans to get angry with us if there's a riot. How often in church history are reasons garnered as religious decisions when actually they're political ones for power and influence? I wonder if these chief priests and teachers of the law prayed that God would provide them with somebody who could get them to Jesus. They were religious leaders. They did believe in God. They did seek God. Why would they have not prayed that God would provide them with someone, maybe from Jesus' inner group, who would help them to kill Jesus? The passage goes on. While he was in Bethany, the table of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Bethany is where Jesus goes back to each evening in this Holy Week. He goes back to the house of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, his close friends. So he goes into Jerusalem every day. He has a fight and argument with the religious leaders, the chief priests. He does some amazing things, teaches some incredible things, and then he goes back there to relax. On this day, he goes back to the home of Simon the leper, slightly early it seems. He goes to the home of an outcast. Have you seen Ben-Hur? Do you remember the lepers in Ben-Hur before they're healed at the death of Jesus? You know your Jewish history, don't you? That if you were a leper, you had to tear your clothes and you had a bell. And if people came near you, you would ring it and shout, "Unclean, unclean," so that people wouldn't come near you and get infected with leprosy. Jesus goes and eats at his house, long before Lady Diana shook hands with any AIDS victim when we didn't know what that disease was. Jesus is at home with outcasts. There's a real difference in this week between Jerusalem and Bethany. Jerusalem is a place of darkness. Let's not do it in the day. Bethany is a place of light. I'll eat with anyone. Jerusalem is a place of hate. Let's scheme to kill him. Bethany is a place of love. I eat with my friends. Jerusalem is a place of death. Let's get rid of him. Bethany is a place of life. Lazarus is raised from the dead. And yet Jesus is in both places. Often we think, well, Jesus will be in the Bethanys of my life, but Jesus won't come with me into the Jerusalems of my life. He won't come into the dark places, the places of hate, the places of death. Be with me in the places of light, the places of love, the places of life. Well, that's 3 hours. That's a sermon there, isn't it? I'll do that one another time. Okay. But Jesus is at home in both places, in your life and my life. How often do I think, oh, Jesus, you won't come to this Jerusalem part of my life, will you? And he says, yeah, I will. Because I want to transform every Jerusalem part of your life into a Bethany place. Everywhere where there is darkness and hate and death, I want to bring light, and I want to bring love, and I want to bring life. This lady is financially well-to-do. This is an expensive jar of perfume. John in his gospel makes it clear that this is Mary, the woman whom Jesus exorcised of 7 demons, again an outcast. And yet she comes in and anoints his head. She anoints his head in the way you would anoint a king before they became the king of your country. Think David, think Solomon, think trumpets, think feasts, think palm branches, think celebration, think banquets. That's when you anointed their head. And Jesus makes it clear in a minute that she's anointed him for burial. There's no throne. There's a cross. She's anointing him for that. The disciples still don't get it, still don't accept that Jesus has come to die. The passage continues. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another. That word indignant, do you remember that from Mark chapter 10? Do you remember that when the mothers were bringing their children to Jesus and the disciples shooed them away and said, no, we're trying to build a kingdom business here. And it says Jesus was indignant with them. Jesus was angry with the disciples and he said, let the little children come to me, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. In fact, if you want in on the kingdom, you must become like a child. Not cute and dribbly, but coming to Jesus saying, I've really not got that much to offer, but I know that you'll take me. So I'm giving you my life. It's interesting, isn't it? We can become indignant about things that are right. Let the little children come to me. And we can become indignant about things that actually it's wrong to be indignant about. Don't let this woman waste this perfume. Have you ever been indignant? Don't put your hand up about the wrong thing. Have you ever taken a firm stand? And then when you step back in the light of day a few months later and look at it, you think, I think I was wrong. Do we have the humility, unlike the disciples, to say, got it wrong, I'm sorry? Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages, and the money given to the poor. They rebuked, they snorted, they glowered at her, the Greek, harshly. Can you imagine being Mary, coming in there, doing that, and then all these men look at you? Maybe you're a woman and you work in a male-orientated environment. Maybe you find that just oppressive because of the atmosphere. Load on top of that they are snorting at you, glowering at you, rebuking you. It's a whole other level. I wonder if she thought, what a fool I've been. Why have I done this? Or maybe she was so consumed with Jesus that she really didn't care what the others around her thought. And if she's like that, she's modelling how Jesus lived. Jesus really didn't care in a positive, healthy way what others thought about him. I'm not talking about that we won't listen to other people and grow and change. I'm talking about that we're so consumed about Jesus that what others think of us comes secondary. So often people in jobs like mine are hampered because of an inner fear of, if I say this or do this or suggest that, what will they think of me? That's why ministers who've been in it as long as me, over 50% of them stop round about this time. This isn't my resignation in case you get excited. But they just get to a point after 20, 21 years where they think, I'm just not actually living the life that I went to Bible college to live. I've become this grey, bland reflection of myself, and I don't feel that I'm actually leading for Jesus at all. I'm just running in front of the people and hoping I'm doing what they want me to do. I don't think she was bothered about what these men thought. The passage continues. Leave her alone, said Jesus. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing. Beautiful in the Greek there can mean morally upright or aesthetically pleasing. It can mean both. So Jesus is saying she's done something that is yes, and she's done something that is wow. The poor you will always have with you. You can help them anytime you want. Jesus isn't saying here, I think, oh, you always have the poor, they're an inconvenience, they get under your shoes, but don't worry about it. I think Jesus is saying, you should always have the poor amongst you in the church. You should be the one place, the one community, the one group of people where those who are struggling can say, actually, I can come and I can feel part of this, I can feel equal, I don't feel that I'm being patronised. If a church does not have the poor in it, is it really fully a church? By the grace of God, yes, but it's always a challenge. One of my friends, when we were leaving Bible college, he went for an interview at a church, and this was in a day and an age when there were far more ministers looking for churches than churches looking for ministers, so we were all getting a bit squirmy. We used to have this leaderboard where your name was on it, and then when you had got a church, they put the church's name under it, and so you could see names being ticked off and your name was still on there. And my mate Andy went for an interview at a church, and they said to him, we've got a very small membership, there's about 20 of us, we're all very high earners, we will pay you double what the minister's stipend is. This is for a guy in his mid-20s, to get double what you expect. They said, we'll give you double that as long as you just keep the church as it is. We want this church for us. We don't want to do outreach and community stuff. We lead busy lives, so we pay you double to keep it as it is. His name stayed empty for a few more months. Thank God. She did what she could, says Jesus, or literally in the Greek, she did what she had. Everything she had, she gave it to me. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, even in Tonbridge in Kent in 2019, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Passage continues. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted, maybe even thought our prayer has been answered, to hear this and promised to give him money. We know, don't we, that they gave him 30 pieces of silver, which is what you paid for a slave. I have that body there to work in my field. Here's the 30 pieces of silver. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. For the rest of this gospel, Judas is referred to not as Judas, but as the betrayer. Some people say, well, God made him do it, he had no choice. Do I really believe in a God that creates a human being so that they will betray the Son of the living God and then commit suicide in a field? I don't. I think the option was there for him, and Judas stepped into it. So who am I in this passage? Am I the religious leaders? The religious leaders who are concerned with upholding traditions. Some traditions are fantastic, others are just outdated things that we used to do. Am I concerned with having my power? Am I concerned with keeping in step with the current culture? Because that's what the religious leaders were doing. We need to keep our position, we need to maintain the temple, and culturally we need to keep in with the Romans. Am I like Judas? The church in every generation needs a fresh expression of what it means to follow Jesus if we're not to become a maintaining museum. We are a missional movement. You've heard the quote, the church is only ever one generation away from extinction. And what that means is that when we say we're going to just keep it as it is now, we want it for us, like that church my friend was invited to go to, we're just one generation away from closing. How many massive church buildings have you been into where there's a scattering of people on a Sunday and nothing during the week? Because sometimes, not always, sometimes people move away, sometimes communities change economically, but often we made a decision that we want to keep it as it is for us. There's some things that go on in this church that an old fuddy-duddy like me just doesn't get. Honestly, I'm 46 now. I'm nearing the end. And you laugh, but it can feel like that. Some of the songs we sing, I just don't get. And it's not because they're theologically incorrect, and it's not because I'm naff at singing, which is true, the latter. It's just they're not what I was brought up on. I love my teenage songs from Spring Harvest and from Brigade Camps and from the early 20s, not 1920s when I was in my 20s. I will sing The Wondrous Story at my funeral. Because they mean something to me. But I have got to be bigger than that. And so I want it for the whole church. When I discussed this point with the three people that came in with me this week, one of them, a lady who was more senior in years, she said, I've got a lot of hope in the up-and-coming generation. She said, they talk to me on a Sunday evening, and I'm really encouraged by the young people that are coming up and through our church. That's a compliment to you. Okay, so when you're in trouble with your parents next time, lay that one out and say, hang on a minute, before you ground me, there's a lady at the church that thinks we're all right. Are we willing to every generation seek a fresh expression of what it means to be church? I'm not just talking about singing on Sundays, I'm talking about the whole way we do things. Am I like Judas? Judas was saying, Jesus, I'll follow you, but I'm king. So I'll follow you, you can be my friend, but you've got to do things the way I want them done. And if you do things the way I want them done, then I'll follow you. But if you don't, then I'm going to betray you. I don't know about you, but I'm never like that. Or am I in my darker Jerusalem moments? Jesus, if you answer this prayer for me in the way I want, then I'll give you 100%. How often have you had a prayer not answered in the way you want? You think, I'm just going to take it easy with God at the moment. I'm going to put things on the back burner. And God, when you're ready to re-engage in the way I want, then I'll come back. And some of those things are deeply tragic, aren't they? I'm not making a judgment here. But who is king in your life and my life? Is it Jesus? Or is it you? Is it me? My answer is, for me, it fluctuates through the week. Sometimes I'm in Bethany and Jesus is king. And other moments I'm in Jerusalem and I jolly well know that I'm king, that I've made the decision for myself. And Jesus, you can just chill out for a moment until I'm ready for you to be back on the throne. I want less and less Jerusalem moments and more Bethany moments in my life. Or am I like Mary, who extravagantly worships Jesus in any place and at any time? Not just on a Sunday, but all through the week. And is so focused and consumed by him that what others think doesn't really matter that much. And how about us as a church? Are we like Mary? I see Mary moments in this church every day of the week. And as I share some of these, please don't think that I'm saying they started when I arrived here. These have been going on in this church for 150 years, since we met in Poundland. And they're still going on today. I know that people come in here and they set up on a Sunday. There's one lady who was in here this morning at 7 a.m. because she had a couple of things to do, and she said, I can't get both of them done if I don't come in early to set up. Can you just close your eyes for a moment, please? And if you're involved in anything here on a Sunday morning, and that's from whatever it is you think's important to saying hello to the person next to you, because that is involvement, can you put your hand up, please? Thank you. Please put them down. Most of us, and I reckon probably all of us if we're honest, are involved in this place on a Sunday. We had a newcomers lunch last week that Sally Allen organised. We had about 40 people come. We shared a meal together. We introduced them to all the things that are going on in this place. And then one lady very politely interrupted Sally and said, excuse me, can I just say something? And Sally said, no, be quiet, I'm the minister. No, she didn't. She said, yes, please do. And the lady said, our family have been coming here for a few weeks and we have felt so welcomed in this church. You are doing something right that has helped us find a home. I don't think that's bad for a roast dinner for just under £2 per head, do you? To make them feel welcome. I think that's a good investment of finances so that people can find a place here. Our small groups, I know of a couple here, and they don't know that I know this, and I can't remember how I do know it, because a lot of people tell me a lot of different things. But I know of a couple here, one bank holiday, they knew that someone else, a single person, was on their own and they were in a desperate place, and so they invited that person round for the whole day, just to be with them. Bank holidays are oftentimes, aren't they, of let's get the family together, let's catch up with those that we haven't seen for a while. For this couple, they sat down and I think they thought, what would Jesus do? And they thought, we'll invite that person who's going to be completely on their own. And you could multiply that time and time again in this church, in the small groups, through all the things that you're doing where oil and perfume is being poured on people's heads in an extravagant and loving way. In TN10, which is our postcode, which is one of our focuses as a church in our vision, food. There's a lady that comes here. There's about 20 people that come every day of the week, Monday through Friday. They queue up at 9 o'clock out there till the doors open at 9:30 so they can collect their food. And one of them came up to Gemma, our community work coordinator. Please wave for us, Gemma, so people know. And she said, I'm not really desperate for the food. I mean, I need it. But this is the only point in the day when I get to talk to other people. Is it okay if I come? That's perfume. Longmead School, they come into our day centre now twice a month, and it's great when you see them come in on a Wednesday or Thursday and they just run to these old people. Thank the Lord they don't knock them over because they're in those destroyer chairs. You've seen the chairs, haven't you, in the day centre? You're not going to budge me out of this. This is like something out of Star Trek. And there was one girl from Longmead School, and I spoke to the teacher this week to make sure I'd got it absolutely correct. And they said this girl had come in to the day centre. Before she came into the day centre, she hadn't spoken in class at all. She wouldn't talk to anyone, the teacher, fellow pupils, anyone. She came into the day centre, began to talk to an old person who told them about their life, and she went back to school and she started talking to other children and the teacher. Is that not brilliant? That is perfume poured on her head. shoes. I can't remember what that one is. Let me have a look. Oh yes, there's someone in this church and they've been badgering me for quite a while, and they said, I love it that we give out food and that we have the food parcels that people can have, but I would love it if we could have something where people could come and choose their own food, so that they've got dignity. I get that some people need bags, I get that some people want to queue up and get it, but can we have somewhere where people can come in and actually choose food as if it was a real shop? And we've spoken to the shopkeeper over the road so that we weren't conflicting with him, and he said, I don't really do fresh food, so go for it, that's absolutely fine. And so Tim Rylett built those beautiful wooden panels in the creche. Have you seen them, those doors that open up? We've redecorated it, and there are loads and loads of shelves of food so people can come in. And the person who was badgering me about it, he is there twice a week, one morning, one afternoon, so that people can come in. They are signposted to us and they can get their food. The first morning he was in there, he fell asleep in his chair. He was asleep for a good hour. And I said to one of the people in the church, why don't we go in at the end and say, it was brilliant, there were over 50 people came in here today, they were just flooding in, beep, 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 it was amazing. And at the end he woke up and he said to me, it was brilliant. Had our first person come in today, one small step. We had a dad come in whose wife has left him and he's got 2 young boys and he doesn't know what to do. And so I stood with him as he chose the food that would work for his family, giving them choice. We've got a breastfeeding clinic here, meets every Tuesday. Parents come in and they learn how to breastfeed and how to tie their babies in papooses, is it? Like kangaroos do and all that kind of stuff. It's all mind-boggling to me. Just put them in a pram when I had babies, left them in the corner and then that was it. And you should see them coming in and the hope they get. They had their Christmas party last Tuesday, way too early, it's ridiculous, but maybe they needed that preparation time. And one lady from this church came in with her 2-year-old son, and she's got a young baby. She said I could share this. And the 2-year-old son came in with his 2-year-old friend, and as they walked in, he said to his 2-year-old friend, this is my church. This is where I come. We talk about Jesus here. 2 years old, beginning to get it. Sally Allen was out there one day and this lady came in very troubled, and Sally said, would you like to talk with me? Sally, can you wave for those who don't know who you are? She said, everyone should know who I am. Gareth, have a word. And she said, lady, would you like to chat? And she said, yes. So they went down to a room that's got a glass window and it's all appropriate, and they were chatting, and Sally said, would you like me to pray with you? She said, I would love that. And Sally prayed for her, and Sally said, all I can say now is the presence of God, you know that heaviness of God, that weight of God, in the Hebrew is kabod, I think it is, or kavod, it just dwelt in the room. And the woman said, what's this? What's going on? What am I feeling? And Sally said, the presence of God. This is God letting you know that he loves you. She didn't come in for that, but that's what she got from God. I bumped into somebody round about my age who I know, and they said, Neil, do you have counsellors at your church? That was the exact words they used. I said, yes. She said, can you arrange one for me? When I went away, I thought, why did she ask for a counsellor at our church? And I thought, it's because we had her dad's funeral service here a couple of years ago, and this is a safe place for her. I caught up with her last week. She said, I've hooked up with that counsellor. It is brilliant. 45 minutes and already things in my life are beginning to change. Crosslight, the debt advice. They have so many desks in here, it is like an IKEA warehouse. If you come in here on a Monday or a Tuesday evening, the place is filled with people who come in desperate because their life is in a mess, because their finances have got out of control and they feel utterly ashamed about it, and they've buried it deep, and they're now at a place where the letters coming in are more than the notes that are in their bank account. And so they come in. I worked out roughly, and I might have these figures wrong, but if we charged Crosslight a going rate for everything they do, we could make 20 grand a year. But we don't want that, do we? Why charge a debt advice centre to use our rooms? We'd rather they use that 20 grand to employ more people or to do more advertising or whatever it is they need to do. We want to give them that space and facility free so that they can set people free from the shackles of financial... If you came in here on a Tuesday, you'd see some of our adults, teachers, ex-teachers, and then you see some other people come in, other adults, and they go down to one of the rooms and they get out very simple children's books and they teach these people to read. some of them immigrants. One lad, early 20s, can barely speak English. All he says to me is, "I like Barcelona." I say, "Well, I like Arsenal, sort your life out." And he sits with an ex-head teacher every week and learns to read. Some people came in and said, "We can't actually fill out these forms from the government. We don't understand them." That actually wasn't technically correct. It wasn't that they didn't understand them, they couldn't read them. And so they're learning to read so that when those forms come through, they can actually begin to read. And that's people here giving of their time. The chairman of Tonbridge Angels, a tiny man, he sits with me every month for a coffee just to see how he's doing. He knows I pray for him. And he said to me when we met last time, and he gave me permission to share this, "Neil, I don't know what to do with your church." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you don't want anything from us. You just keep giving and giving and giving of your time, of gifts, of putting on things for the local community. Everyone else who wants to be involved with Tonbridge Angels wants something back from us, whether it's advertising their company or whatever it may be. I don't know what to do with Tonbridge Baptist Church. It's brilliant." Falls prevention. In here on a Thursday, senior folk coming in. One lady said, "I can now get in and out of the bath." And beyond TN10, because in our vision and values it's always TN10 and beyond. It's never one or the other. The two go hand in hand. We had a letter from a local school in Tonbridge that said, "We've got a 17-year-old lad, he's left his grandma's house, he's living in a drug den above a shop in Tonbridge, and we're worried about him." And in the email it said, "We are in awe of your community work, please help us." Within a week we'd signposted, and that lad was in a safe environment to continue his A-level studies rather than a place where people are injecting themselves with heroin. That is perfume poured on a head. Barima, one of our core mission partners, in a 5-minute video he did recently, he said so many times, "By the grace of God, we thank TBC for all the support they give us." Prayer, finance. What we do here, what you do, by the grace of God, makes a difference to a man and a woman who are planting over 200 churches in Africa. Wow. Oasis Belgium said, "Could you please give us £5,000 so that we can run our cafe for immigrant women and single mothers for a year? Harvest this year, you gave enough money so that they can run it for 18 months. Can you imagine that if you're Rachel and Phil Lane? That you haven't got to fundraise and spend energy on that for a cafe for 18 months. That the money is there so that you can make a gospel difference and pour perfume on these people's heads." The recovery course that runs here every year. A couple of weeks ago on the Rugby World Cup final day, 95 people thought, rather than watching England whimper out of the final, I'm going to come here on behalf of my church to learn about the recovery course so that they could go back to almost 95 other churches and say, this is something we can do in our church for people who struggle with different addictions. Our Aslan group, which Jackie, can you wave, runs for us with loads of other volunteers for young people with additional needs. At the Premier Digital Awards earlier this year, our website, Jackie's website, came runner-up in those that clearly communicate the gospel message to people through a website. This little group, how many people are in it? Is it 8? 8 young people are in it, was up against national websites like Sports Chaplaincy UK and Christians in Sport. And we came runner-up. That is perfume on a head. Prison visitation. There are people who are not here this morning who will be here at the evening service because at the moment they are in Maidstone Prison, playing a piano, singing a song, talking to prisoners who have lost all hope. And that has been going on in this church for decades. I remember going in and preaching when I was 19 and I knew it all. And you see these people completely desperate. And Sunday is an escape from their cell, but also Jesus creeps in and they hear about him. Oasis India. Graham Mungean just back from Oasis India, where they've celebrated their 25-year anniversary. Dave Hitchcock is also over there as well, because you were in at the start of that, and all the work that they are doing in that country. Catherine Gonzalez fell in love with Peter Gonzalez, and they've created the most adorable cherub-like daughter. If it wasn't worth it for anything else, it was worth it for that. But so much more was done. So much more. And your front line. Where is it that you spend most of your week? In the powers of government. Walking along hospital wards. In school classrooms. In caring homes for your elderly loved ones. With your grandchildren on your knees so that your daughter or husband can go back to work. Down your allotment, rubbing shoulders with other people who don't know Jesus yet. In all of those places as well. At school, hospital, care home, and everywhere in between. Perfume is being poured on heads by you. Not because we've got it all together, but because the Jesus who lives within us has got it all together. I don't know about you. I want to look at, and I want to focus, and I know we're not perfect, I want to look and focus on the Mary stories amongst us. In a leadership team prayer meeting we had a couple of months ago, Steve Cole got a bit sweaty because we were talking about something really negative. He said, I've given up an evening with my wife and I'm away for 2 days in Leeds and we're talking about this for over an hour. Can we talk about some of the good things God's doing? And so for 45 minutes, Gareth, our chair, led us as we just shared different things that God's doing. And I've just given you a few highlights there. How about if we increasingly decide as a family to say, let's look for the Mary moments, for the Bethany moments, rather than the religious leaders and the Judas moments that happen in Jerusalem. It's so easy to moan. As a culture, we have a first-class honours degree in it in this country. We love stripping and pulling people down. Let's look for those moments where a woman walks in and pours oil on the head. And Jesus says, what she's done will be remembered forever. Let's pray together. Loving God, I want to be more like Mary in this story. That's a decision I've been reminded of again as I've looked at this passage over the last couple of weeks. Being Judas makes me feel unclean. Being the religious leaders just plain tires me out. But being Mary puts a bit of a spring in my step. Because then I see what you're doing in and through us. Jesus, we pray in your name. Amen.